Have you ever found yourself wide awake at 3 a.m., the world around you silent and still, yet your mind is racing with thoughts that seem impossible to quiet? The clock ticks on, and you lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering, why can't I just sleep? Maybe you've even questioned if something is wrong with your body or your mind. It's a familiar scenario for many, especially as we grow older, yet it's one that's often met with frustration, confusion, or a sense of helplessness. But what if I told you that waking up at 3 a.m. isn't a sign of something going wrong, but rather a sign of something deeper, a natural shift in your body's rhythm, one that has been happening since the dawn of time? This is not a flaw, but a beautiful part of your journey, one that, through the lens of Buddhist wisdom, can offer clarity and peace. In Buddhism, we are taught that everything is impermanent. Our bodies, our minds, our sleep patterns, all of it changes over time. Change is not something to fear, but something to embrace. The question then becomes, how do we navigate this change with mindfulness? How do we shift from seeing our waking hours as an inconvenience to understanding them as an opportunity for growth, reflection, and peace? Today, let's explore why you might find yourself waking up at 3 a.m. and why, far from being a sign of aging, it's a sign of evolution. Together, we'll uncover how Buddhist philosophy can offer us the tools to not only accept these changes, but to find a sense of serenity within them. Let's dive deeper into this fascinating journey, because understanding why we wake up at 3 a.m. might just change the way we approach not only sleep, but life itself. 1. The decline of melatonin and embracing change. As we age, the body undergoes countless transformations, some we may see, and others that quietly shift beneath the surface. One such change, often unnoticed until it affects our sleep, is the gradual decline in melatonin production. Melatonin is the hormone responsible for regulating our sleep-wake cycle, our internal body clock. When we were younger, our bodies produced this hormone in abundance, ensuring that we could fall asleep easily, stay asleep through the night, and wake up feeling refreshed. But as the years pass, melatonin production decreases, and suddenly, that peaceful slumber we once took for granted becomes elusive. Waking up in the middle of the night, especially around 3 a.m., is a common experience for many older adults, and it's often met with frustration. We lie there, eyes wide open, thoughts swirling, questioning why we can't get back to sleep. In Buddhist philosophy, we're reminded that everything in life is impermanent, and this natural change in our bodies is no different. Rather than seeing it as a flaw or something to fix, we are invited to view it as a part of our evolving journey. This shift can be likened to the changing of the seasons. Just as the seasons move from one to the next, imperceptibly and naturally, so does our body's rhythm. And just like how we adapt to the seasons, by wearing warmer clothes when it's cold, or staying indoors when it rains, we can adapt to these changes in our sleep cycle. Instead of resisting, we can embrace the wisdom of mindfulness, the Buddhist practice of being aware and present with what is. We are encouraged to observe these moments with curiosity and acceptance, rather than frustration. Take the story of Harold, a 72-year-old man who always considered himself a sound sleeper. But recently, he noticed himself waking up at 3:15 a.m. almost every night. Initially, he felt alarmed and upset, thinking there was something wrong with him. But upon learning that this was a normal part of aging, tied to the natural decline in melatonin, he began to adjust his habits. He darkened his bedroom more, avoided screens an hour before bed, and took evening walks to help reinforce his natural rhythm. These small changes, rooted in mindfulness, allowed him to cultivate peace and acceptance instead of frustration. Harold's experience is a reminder that waking up at 3 a.m. is not a sign of failure. It's a shift, a signal from our bodies that we can learn to work with. In Buddhist teachings, we are often reminded that suffering arises from our attachment to the way things used to be. The pain of waking up early at night may be alleviated when we stop fighting the change and instead embrace it with kindness and understanding. Our body, just like our minds, is ever evolving, and when we stop resisting that evolution, we can find peace in the process. 2. The shifting sleep cycle and the wisdom of acceptance. As we grow older, our bodies begin to follow a different rhythm, a rhythm that may no longer align with the patterns of youth. One of the most common shifts in the aging process is the natural alteration of our circadian rhythms, the internal clocks that govern our sleep cycles. This phenomenon, known as advanced sleep phase, causes the body to feel sleepy earlier in the evening and wake up earlier in the morning. It can often feel disorienting, especially when the world around us doesn't follow the same schedule. You might find yourself feeling ready for bed at 8:30 p.m. and by 3 a.m. you're wide awake, even though the sky outside is still dark. At first, it might seem like an inconvenient quirk, something to be corrected. But in the gentle wisdom of Buddhism, we are reminded that everything from our thoughts to our sleep cycles is impermanent, constantly changing, and therefore a part of our natural journey. Just as the day turns into night, our internal rhythms shift, and our role is not to fight against them, but to accept them with grace and awareness. Buddhism teaches us to embrace the present moment, to live fully in the now. This shift in sleep, though it may be frustrating, is an invitation to tune in more deeply to our own inner rhythms. When we stop expecting to adhere to old patterns or societal norms about when we should sleep and wake, we open ourselves to a new understanding of our evolving needs. Rather than seeing this change as a disruption, we can begin to view it as a reflection of the wisdom we've accumulated over the years. Let me share the story of Charles, a 68-year-old retiree who, like many others, found himself waking up at 3 a.m. every morning. At first he was puzzled, thinking his sleep was broken. But when he learned about advanced sleep phase and realized that his circadian rhythm had naturally shifted, he began to see this change in a new light. Rather than feeling defeated, he embraced his new sleep pattern. Charles started adjusting his routine, staying up just a little later by reading a book under a warm light, or taking a brief walk after dinner. These small changes helped align his wake-up time with the natural rhythm of the day, bringing him closer to a more peaceful, fulfilling life. This shift in sleep patterns doesn't have to be something we fight against. Instead, it's a chance to adjust our lives in a way that aligns with our true present experience. When we understand that our internal clocks are evolving with age, we can adapt mindfully. Buddhism teaches us that acceptance of impermanence leads to peace, and this is no different when it comes to the natural changes in our sleep cycle. We can approach these changes with awareness, compassion, and gentle adjustment, rather than viewing them as problems to be solved. In the stillness of the night, when we find ourselves awake, we are presented with a rare opportunity to practice mindfulness and acceptance. We don't need to force ourselves to return to a previous state of being, one that may no longer suit our current needs. Instead, we can learn to honor the rhythms of our aging bodies and embrace the peace that comes from adjusting to the natural flow of life. 3. Physical discomfort and finding stillness within. As our bodies age, they often become more sensitive to the subtle discomforts of life. Whether it's an aching joint, the need to visit the bathroom in the middle of the night, or the effects of medications, these physical changes can disrupt our sleep in ways that may seem small, but can leave us feeling restless and unsettled. The quiet of the early morning hours when the world around us is still, often makes these discomforts feel more pronounced. But here's where Buddhist philosophy can offer us insight. In Buddhism, we are taught that suffering is a natural part of life. But suffering itself doesn't need to be the source of distress. Instead, suffering can become an opportunity for mindfulness, a chance to tune into our bodies, listen to their needs, and respond with compassion. When we wake up in the middle of the night due to physical discomfort, it's not a sign of failure or something wrong with us. It's simply a sign that we need to be more aware of our bodies, to listen and care for them as we would a dear friend. Many older adults experience physical discomfort in the night, conditions like arthritis, acid reflux, or even just the simple ache of lying in one position for too long. These discomforts can become more noticeable when we're lying still in bed, making it harder to fall back to sleep. For some, the need to get up and use the bathroom in the middle of the night becomes unavoidable as the bladder becomes less elastic with age. And let's not forget the side effects of medications that many of us take, which can contribute to frequent awakenings, temperature changes, or increased sensitivity to light and sound. Take the example of Eleanor, a 76-year-old woman who had always been a relatively light sleeper. She began waking up consistently at 3:30 a.m. And for months, she thought it was just a natural part of getting older. But after speaking with her doctor, she learned that one of her medications was affecting her hydration levels and causing her to get up more frequently during the night. This realization was a turning point. She worked with her doctor to adjust the timing of her medication and added a few lifestyle changes, such as drinking more water earlier in the day and avoiding caffeine after lunch. Slowly, she found that she was waking up less often and could return to sleep more easily. This story illustrates the power of mindfulness and awareness. We can see that our bodies, though they may be more sensitive as we age, are still communicating with us. Every time we wake up due to discomfort, it's a gentle nudge to pay attention, to be mindful of what our bodies need. In Buddhism, we are taught that the path to inner peace begins with awareness of the present moment. By tuning into our bodies and acknowledging their signals, we can respond with compassion and wisdom rather than frustration or guilt. Physical discomfort is a natural part of life, but it doesn't have to rob us of our peace. By approaching these discomforts with mindfulness and understanding, we can turn moments of physical unease into opportunities for self-care, reflection, and deeper connection with our bodies. In the quiet of the night, when we wake up feeling discomfort, it's not a sign that something is wrong with us. Instead, it's an invitation to be kinder, more patient, and more attuned to the needs of our aging bodies. In Buddhist practice, we are constantly reminded to treat ourselves with compassion, to meet our suffering with understanding, not judgment. This means caring for our bodies, listening to their needs, and making small adjustments that honor their natural rhythms. And when we do this, we allow ourselves the space to find peace, even in the midst of discomfort. 4. Lifestyle habits and the gentle path of reflection. As we age, our daily routines naturally evolve. The once busy days filled with work, commutes, errands, and social activities gradually give way to quieter, more reflective moments. Many older adults find themselves eating dinner earlier, winding down sooner in the evening, and perhaps experiencing less physical activity during the day. These subtle shifts in lifestyle, often driven by retirement or changing priorities, can gently alter our sleep patterns in ways that we might not immediately notice. In the stillness of the evening, without the usual external cues like meetings or social gatherings, our body begins to signal that it's time to rest earlier. This shift, though natural, can sometimes push our sleep window forward, causing us to fall asleep earlier and wake up earlier, often around 3 a.m. It's not that our bodies are malfunctioning, rather they are adapting to a new rhythm, one that reflects the quieter pace of life we're now leading. But in the hustle of life's busyness, we might not realize how much our routines have changed until we find ourselves wide awake before dawn. Buddhism teaches us that our habits and routines shape our experiences, and in this case, they shape our sleep. When we engage in certain patterns consistently, whether they are healthy or not, they become ingrained in us, guiding our actions and influencing our mental and physical states. Just as we nourish our bodies with food, we nourish them with the habits we cultivate. And these habits, as simple as they may seem, have a profound impact on our well-being, especially as we grow older. Consider Walter, a 74-year-old man who had recently retired. As his days became quieter, he began to notice a shift in his sleep cycle. He would eat dinner at 5 p.m., fall asleep early in his recliner during the evening news, and head to bed before 9 p.m. At first, it seemed like just another sign of aging. But soon, Walter found himself waking up around 3 a.m., puzzled by why he was waking up so early, long before the birds even began to chirp. After reflecting on his daily routine, he realized that his evening habits, the early dinner, the relaxation in front of the TV, the early bedtime, had all pushed his internal clock forward. His body had naturally adapted to a quieter, more relaxed lifestyle, and in doing so, he had unintentionally shifted his sleep window earlier. By recognizing the subtle changes in his routine, Walter began to make small adjustments. He added a short walk in the afternoon, read in brighter light during the evening, and avoided naps after dinner. These changes helped him push his natural sleep window just a bit later, bringing him back to a rhythm that felt more aligned with his preferred wake-up time. This gentle shift, grounded in mindfulness and awareness, allowed Walter to regain a sense of control over his sleep cycle without fighting the natural changes in his body. Buddhism teaches that awareness of our daily habits is a powerful tool for transformation. When we become mindful of how our routines affect our bodies and minds, we can make conscious choices that support our well-being. Just as a farmer tends to his crops, nurturing them with care and attention, we too must tend to our habits with mindfulness. In doing so, we create a life that is not only peaceful, but aligned with our true needs and rhythms. If we wake up at 3 a.m., instead of feeling frustrated, we can use that moment as a reminder to reflect on our habits. What do we eat? When do we rest? And how do we spend our days? Small adjustments in our routine can help realign our body's internal clock, creating a sleep cycle that serves us well in this new phase of life. By cultivating mindfulness in our daily lives, we can learn to honor our natural rhythms, making peace with the changes that come with aging. In Buddhism, we are often reminded that change is inevitable, but it is not something to fear. Rather, it is an opportunity for growth and awareness. By observing our habits and making mindful adjustments, we can find peace in the natural rhythms of life, including our sleep. And when we do, we allow ourselves the space to embrace the present moment with all its quiet, subtle wisdom. 5. Emotional and psychological restlessness. Embracing the heart's wisdom as we grow older, the quiet moments of the night can become a powerful stage for emotions and thoughts that have been quietly hidden away during the busyness of the day. The stillness of 3 a.m. often brings with it a wave of reflection, where memories, regrets, and unspoken longings can surface. It's not always physical discomfort that wakes us, but the weight of our own emotional and psychological landscape. These early morning awakenings can feel unsettling, as though our minds are sorting through pieces of the past that we've long tucked away. In Buddhist philosophy, we learn that our emotions are not separate from us. They are part of the human experience, just as much as our thoughts, actions, and physical sensations. The Buddha taught that everything is interconnected, and our emotions, even the ones that stir in the quiet of the night, are an invitation to grow in self-awareness and compassion. Rather than seeing these early morning awakenings as a burden, we can choose to view them as an opportunity for emotional healing and self-discovery. When we wake up in the middle of the night, it's not necessarily because something is wrong with us. In fact, it may be that our hearts are simply trying to process what we didn't have time for during the day. These feelings don't need to be pushed away or ignored. Buddhism teaches us the power of mindfulness, to sit with our emotions without judgment, to observe them with compassion, and to let them pass when they are ready. Consider the story of Gloria, an 80-year-old widow who often woke up at 3 a.m., feeling a quiet ache in her heart. During the day, she stayed busy tending to her garden, chatting with her grandchildren, and watching her favorite TV shows. But in the stillness of the night, memories of her late husband would resurface. She would think about their shared moments, the conversations they had, and the loss she still carried. At first, she thought it was something wrong with her sleep, but over time, she realized that these early wake-ups weren't about her body, they were about her heart. Her emotions were simply finding a voice in the quiet of the night. Gloria began to embrace these moments of reflection instead of fighting them. She kept a small journal by her bedside, and when she woke up, she would jot down whatever thoughts came to mind. It didn't matter if it was a memory of her husband or an unspoken worry. Just writing it down allowed her heart to process the emotions gently. She also started adding a quiet evening ritual, like listening to soft music or writing a short note to a friend. These small acts helped Gloria honor her feelings, allowing her to return to sleep with a lighter heart. In Buddhist teachings, we are encouraged to recognize that our emotions, even those that feel painful or unsettling, are not problems to be solved. Instead, they are part of the flow of life. By allowing ourselves to sit with our emotions, we open the door to healing. The Buddha often spoke of the importance of mindfulness in facing our suffering. By observing our emotional restlessness with awareness, we can create the space for those feelings to come and go without becoming overwhelmed by them. Emotional restlessness at 3 a.m. doesn't have to be something to fear. It's a natural part of life, the heart's way of expressing itself when the distractions of the day have faded away. Instead of trying to force ourselves back to sleep or push the feelings aside, we can choose to embrace them with compassion. We can gently reflect on what is coming up for us and ask ourselves what our heart needs in that moment. Is it a chance to remember someone we've lost? Is it an unresolved thought or a worry that hasn't yet been addressed? Buddhism teaches us that there is no right way to feel and no need to rush our emotions. By practicing self-compassion and mindfulness, we can transform these quiet moments into opportunities for growth and understanding. When we honor our emotional landscapes, even in the stillness of the night, we deepen our connection with ourselves, and in doing so, we create the space for greater peace and acceptance, not just in our sleep, but in our lives. As we come to the end of our exploration into the quiet hours of 3 a.m., I invite you to see these moments not as interruptions, but as invitations to reconnect with your true self. Remember, the natural changes in your sleep cycle, from waking in the stillness of the night to embracing early mornings, are part of a larger, evolving journey. In Buddhist philosophy, we learn that everything, from our bodies to our thoughts, is in a constant state of flux. Rather than resisting this change, we are called to meet it with compassion and mindfulness. Each waking moment, whether it's 3 a.m. or the crack of dawn, offers an opportunity for reflection and growth. These early hours, though they may seem inconvenient at first, can be moments of profound awareness if we allow them to be. By embracing the shifts in our sleep patterns, we open the door to greater peace, understanding, and connection with ourselves. So I ask you, what did you learn today? How can you take this new perspective and apply it to your life, not just to your sleep, but to your health, your emotions, and your daily journey? What steps can you take to be kinder to yourself when the early hours arrive? And how can you use this awareness to nurture the rhythm of your life? I truly appreciate you joining us on this journey today. If this video resonated with you and you found it valuable, please like, share, and subscribe. By subscribing, you continue to support our mission to bring more peace, mindfulness, and Buddhist wisdom into the lives of others. Until next time, may you find deep peace in the quiet moments of your life, and may your journey be filled with wisdom, compassion, and understanding.